Imagine a vibrant discussion between people that includes both openness and critical thought in the pursuit of truth. The Purchasing Truth podcast is an experience, a journey, an exploration of the impact that negative messages in politics and the media have on our families, community, society, and nation. Join your hosts, Bill Stierle and Tom Hazard, to discover new concepts and language strategies that will reveal effective ways of establishing truth. This podcast series will tackle current events, leadership challenges, healthcare confusion, integrity in business, and many other areas that affect us all. Gain clarity and understanding of the various truth perspectives. Welcome to Purchasing Truth.
Hey everyone, and I'm Tom Hazard along with your host Bill Stierle, and this is Purchasing Truth. And you know, Bill, I'm excited to talk about the reality of political messages and, you know, the reality of our current political status, especially on the Democratic side, as we're coming up to the first in the nation caucus or primary Iowa caucuses. And boy, there's a lot of infighting going on, and maybe that's a good place to start.
Yeah.
And it's interesting to see what messages are starting to stick and which ones are not. So why don't we start there?
It's true. Yeah. One of the things, Tom, that is the biggest challenge as Joe Biden and Bernie Sanders and Elizabeth Warren and Pete Buttigieg, as the current front runners are looking to do, is find a message that sticks. And how do you get a message that sticks inside someone's consciousness? And it could be a positive message or it could be a negative message. And it could be a negative message about what's wrong with the country. It's really, and it could be painted in a very shadowy, kind of yucky way. I think that, calling a certain group of people a name and marginalizing a group, and then keep coming back around to that touch point as a message, creates the quality, or meets a very important need for us as human beings, is certainty. And certainty is, this belief is in alignment with my belief. Now, it doesn't mean if the belief is right or wrong or ethical or even American. Even an American belief could be traded very easily, for a belief that I feel certain about. And this is the way I would like to see America, even though the Constitution, it's outside that belief. That this is, this is what we're doing here, one nation under God, right? It's like this is the belief of inclusion instead of the belief of exclusion. So, and the other candidates, Amy Klobuchar, Tom Steyer, Michael Bloomberg, and Andrew Yang, all of those folks also have got to find what message do they want to have as a part of certainty, and how big of a boulder is it to push up the hill in order to get some traction on it. I think that, Andrew Yang's give $1,000, as, something, and we're going to tax these big tech companies for using our data, is the first foray into setting a new vision. And we'll talk about how our data is being used and our brains are being hacked and utilized. And it's one thing for them to do it and allow to do it, but what are we getting for it? It's sort of ours, isn't it? And if you want access to my brain, don't you think you should pay for it? And by the way, aren't you making billions off of that, in order to access our data, and people are interested in that? Gosh, I would like to see something for that, because it happens to be mine. Unless, and it goes, well, but they're saying, but why do we need to do it when you're just giving it to us for free? You don't have any value in it. But let's suppose we do. Okay, so these are messages. That's a message that I would like to see amplify, because I think that might be a message that would stick. as cleanly as I just pitched it. There's two or three other levels of impact, I think, that could be designed around that. Other than the person understanding it, it's the person really embodying it as, this is something I believe strongly about as an American, as a rugged independent individual. My data is mine. You see how, see, all
Yeah.
of a sudden I got to the message, I got to the certainty, I got to the certainty. Hey, my data is mine. And I'm an American, my data is mine. Now, see, the Yang campaign, if they were listening to this right now, that's the slogan, my data is mine. Or, you would like my data? Pay for my data. Yeah.
Well,
So anyways,
that's actually really helpful to see how you went through that process in your mind to get to a message of certainty, and it really foreshadows a future episode here on Purchasing Truth where we're going to talk about your data. So I do like that.
good.
But yeah, we could go down that rabbit hole really deeply right now, but we're going to hold off on that because I think it
Please
is
do.
an important
It
future
is.
episode, because one of the things that, and just to tease a little more to that episode and then we'll get off it, is that recent news has come out that Facebook is not going to vet the truth of political messages. They're not going to
No.
censor them if they're not true. They're allowing people to, in a free speech sense,
Right.
put messages out there that are not truthful. So anyway, all right, now we'll put that in a parking lot, and that'll be a whole nother episode, maybe a long
So
episode.
true.
Yeah.
Yeah, and certainty, and the weapon of the First Amendment, or this freedom of speech,
Freedom of
is,
speech.
yes, is it's been weaponized. It's been now being able to be purchased for whoever has the greatest dollar. I mean, well, Michael Bloomberg is doing spending a lot of money in media, going like, "Hey, this is who I am. I'm not like those other folks, and I'm most certainly not like the billionaire. And oh, by the way, if you do not choose me, I'm still not taking the other guy. I'm still not taking Trump. I'm gonna support whoever gets the nomination." And he came out and said that. He goes like, I this is about Trump, and I have the belief that I'm the best guy because I kind of played this, I've played a pretty big role in government and in business and stuff. But, you know, I mean, and he's using his own money to purchase truth, is what he's
He
doing.
he is, and I think it'll be interesting to see how it plays out. I mean, I do
Yes,
think that it's Um, I mean, I guess this is an opinion, and we'll wait to find out if it how much of a fact it ends up becoming. But I think it's a really tall task that he's set up for himself. It's interesting how he does it though, because he's staying above the fray. He's staying out of the infighting going on amongst all the Democratic candidates because he's not even participating in the Iowa caucus and the New Hampshire primary and some of those early states. He's
North States, yeah.
waiting to get in until later, and so he can have all this positive and setting the vision type of messaging, and he's
That's right.
he's all over all the airwaves, and his messages are quite effective, I think, in terms of what he's saying and the level of integrity that he's establishing.
That's right. That's right. And I think he is establishing integrity and consistency and stability in regards to that. Whether or not, I mean, it's we're his version is kind of dripping certainty through very traditional, here's what I've done and here's why I'm a good person, positive messaging. And and each one of the candidates has has soft spots to them that others got to be doing, is something real or imagined being hooked to them. I mean, I there's one person that said, gosh, this is, how many times do I need to hear Sleepy Joe? and how many times I need to hear, Pocahontas, although that hasn't been used so often recently. And what are you going to do with uh, you know, uh, Crazy Bernie? It's like, how many times of those how can I say that, very, very young labeling tactics. Now, the word young is important here because youthful language and simple messaging many times with the American voter sticks because it's so in alignment with where that messaging is, because it's simple. It's simple. The word hope is a very simple message, that there's, gosh, let's just do some hope because that other character in this other party is just not very hopeful. And then, and then when you win, you got to do something with it. You can't necessarily, you've got to be able to do what's best for the people while you've got the momentum. And that's one of the challenges that the Obama administration got into early, is that they needed to, you won, you had hope, now give us a whole bunch of it real soon.
Well, and it was really hard to do when the country was in the economic ditch that it was in, even though I think they did so many things that were necessary for the company to survive and for Wall Street not to fail.
Yes.
That wasn't the hope. I mean, it was what people needed. It's what the country needed, but that wasn't like the hope and vision that they were looking for. I think maybe the Affordable Care Act ended up being more delivering on that hope for so many people that didn't have insurance, right?
That's right.
But so interestingly, the messaging, coming out of the candidates here in the run up to the Iowa caucus, you mentioned that, policy Andy Yang has put out about, $1,000 for everybody. Was it per month? I think. I mean, it was really an audacious plan that's very different, but
it's doable, and it's doable.
Well,
it's like crazy,
and I think
it can work
if you get into it and you look at the details. It can, but it's not a simple message. And I think that it's hard for that to stick because it's unbelievable to people. And I think that's
outside their belief structures. And meanwhile, it's like, you mean I have something of value? Oh, this is something of value I don't have to work for? See, it's right against the entire 50s, the Puritan work ethic. You've got to do something. Because, like, wait a minute, my data has value? It's like my contact information, who I am as a person, has value. Oh, I didn't know that. And it's interesting. If he were to stay on, that same thread is, listen, oil's valuable, isn't it? Well, the Alaskans, everybody in Alaska gets money from the oil that's being drilled in their state. Don't you think that you could get that same value? I mean, it is a lot to get across. It is a lot of, it's a boulder. See, many of these messages are very much like the story of Sisyphus pushing the boulder up the hill. Do you know this story very good?
I mean, I know it generally, yes, but please share it with the audience.
Sure, it's really important. It's a Greek tale where, Sisyphus kind of did some things that the gods were angry about, and Zeus sentenced him for all eternity to push a boulder up a hill. And of course, as you're pushing a boulder up a hill, it gets steeper and steeper and steeper, gets heavier, and then all of a sudden, he becomes weak at whatever thing, it rolls back down the hill. The next morning he wakes up, he's got to push the boulder up the hill. Now, these candidates are in their own boulder experience, and if they can get a message that would get to them to some plateau where they can say, okay, now I've gotten this far, and all and the what Trump used is Trump used everybody else's efforts against them. So when Ted Cruz was ahead, he went after Ted Cruz, and whatever momentum Ted had, he just took the momentum and he pulled it on his side with branding and marketing. Here's what Ted did. Here's some negative messages about Ted. Here's what he did, until he took all of Ted's votes. And then
Well,
he just went through the candidates one by one.
and he definitely is a master of that, simple messaging, then labeling that ends up adding to that big boulder that you're trying to push up the hill. It's like you've got a bunch of people sitting on it or actually pushing it downhill, which isn't helpful. Interestingly, though, we don't see, well, I think actually refreshingly, we don't see a lot of that going on amongst the Democratic candidates in terms of labeling each other in that simple messaging to try to bring each other down on the one hand. On the other hand, an Amy Klobuchar, a Tom Steyer, an Andy Yang could have used that kind of messaging to rise to the top, to get more momentum behind them, to get more donors. And I think although Amy Klobuchar and Andy Yang have been on the debate stage, I think it's questionable whether they're on the next one. I don't remember, but they're gonna lose eventually because they don't have enough momentum behind them.
Correct. Yeah. They're pushing the boulder all by themselves. And even all the candidates that, if you use a negative message, you better be ready to take that negative message and put 5 to 10 on top, positive messages on top of it. If you're gonna stay in the integrity race. If you don't want to stay in the integrity race, then you go the way Trump went, which is negative message. They're bad people. This is the group you need to worry about. This is these are evil individuals, or whatever. And if I think about some people I know in my life who have this mindset of being a Trump supporter no matter what, they're they get stuck on so many different points of confirmation bias. This is what he represents to me. And then I look at how the truth has been purchased. I'm going like, he says and does things that are not in alignment with what you just said you think he's about. And such a firestorm issue such as abortion, which is a fire, is basically keeps many of those folks in Trump's camp.
I agree, it does. Yeah.
And it keeps them locked in there. He must be religious because he's fighting for our passionate primary issue. I mean, it just keeps them locked into the camp. And meanwhile, they're not looking at the freedom piece of it. It's robbing choice of another person and they've got to make that decision. And no matter what you think about what that decision, they've got to make that decision. So again, very, very, very challenging. And I know in the past we've had some of these moments where they found the negative message that if we go back to Bush #1 against Dukakis, it was the Willie Horton campaign. This is the way him and his people are going to deal with jails, and we do not want these people coming out on furlough. Oh gosh, my judgmental mind said, unless it's Jeffrey Epstein. So we don't want people coming out on furlough if they're going to hurt you, and there's people coming out on furlough that's going to hurt you. Or the ethical sticky message about monkey business, the extramarital affair of Gary Hart, and how that was amplified, and all of a sudden it's a moralistic issue, and then all of a sudden it's Democrat immoral because this person or these people are doing this immoral thing. It's like, yeah, but we're not even looking in our own house or our own closet about what's happening on our side, because, well, that's our bias. Our bias is we're on this team. And we talked about this in the past about, whether you're putting an LSU shirt on or a Clemson shirt on, it's difficult to, this is the best my team did, and I've got to mourn the loss of that and get ready for the next season. In politics, it's a little bit difficult because it's not a win-loss game as much as is that whoever wins is setting the value set for everyone else in the nation based on laws and things like that.
Well, that's really interesting, Bill. And I think it shows, I think there are two of the Democratic candidates that really stand out right now as putting out that larger message, trying to set the vision that we need to defeat Trump, that he is not in integrity, and whatever it is about Trump that you want to say or you don't like. You have Joe Biden at the top right now of the Democratic field, the front runner, who is putting out ads that aren't talking about why he's better than Bernie Sanders or Elizabeth Warren or Pete Buttigieg or any of the others. He's putting out messages right now that are using Trump's own words against him, because for 6 or 7 months now, Donald Trump has been concerned about Joe Biden to the point where he's mentioned him in almost every political rally that he goes to. And so Joe Biden's now taking clips of all that where he's talking about Joe Biden, Joe Biden, Joe Biden. And now he's amplifying that, saying, hey, I'm who he's afraid of. This is how we're going to defeat Trump. Similarly, you have Michael Bloomberg, who is not engaging in political attacks against other Democratic candidates. Like you said earlier, he's going to support whoever the Democratic candidate is. He continues to illuminate not only what's positive and vision setting about his own record and what he wants to do in the country, but he is talking about defeating Trump. And not
a real billionaire spending his own billionaire monies, and he's going like, well, this is the value I see in America. This is the value I see in government, and we're going to do something that works, because we got to get something that works here.
And meanwhile, you've got Bernie Sanders and Elizabeth Warren, spatting, maybe, I don't know what the proper word is, but it seems like, they're each, well, especially Elizabeth Warren, who's a little behind, I think, is grasping and picking a fight with Bernie Sanders, really trying to find ways to take him down, because I think her campaign sees his voters as more in alignment with her than maybe Joe Biden.
Such a mistake to go out to do that. Her best strategy, if I was on her campaign, her best strategy would really get back to and start the messaging that is going to kind of solidify the not the plan, but the outcome of what the plan will get her. Right now, the plan is more of, it gets people stuck too much in a step-by-step mindset. But when a person communicates about the end result, about the why of this is what you're going to receive at the end of this, and I'm the person who has already mapped that out.
Well, and to use your language, what's the reward for the plan?
What's the reward?
Right?
That's right.
The outcome, the reward. And that's setting the vision, isn't it?
The setting the vision. You got to say, here's the reward. Every TV commercial does this. Here's what this thing is going to get you. And then they work back. Imagine what it would be like to get the thing I just told you that this product was going to give you. and that's called anticipation. Then uncertainty. If you don't get it now, you're still going to be thinking about this commercial later. So you may want to do this now so you're not thinking about this commercial later, this loss that you're going to experience. I don't want to experience loss. I want the vision that you just created for me.
You know what, Bill? So I'm seeing a metaphor in my mind right now, and I'm realizing that Bernie Sanders, Elizabeth Warren, Amy Klobuchar, and Andy Yang for sure. Maybe to an extent Tom Steyer, because he's in the fight on the debate stage. All these guys that are not the front runner and not setting a vision. Guys, I shouldn't say that. There's two women in there. All these people that are in there that are, you know,
Good.
doing this little infighting and not setting the vision are rearranging the deck chairs of the Democratic Party platform while their ship is sinking. And they're not setting the vision of where's the ship going? Where do we need to get to? And, how and what is that reward once we get there? And Joe Biden, Michael Bloomberg, and I'm gonna personally lump Pete Buttigieg in there because I think he is more setting the vision and he's not getting involved in what
He's a little better.
people try to attack him on this or that detail, and he stays above it. He doesn't really play into that, I would say, more petty infighting game. He may not win the nomination at the end of the day, but he's gonna be a lot cleaner when he comes out the other side. So I think we're gonna see our nominee is going to be one of these people setting the vision, isn't it?
Yeah. So Kamala Harris did, she got on the debate stage and she took a shot at Joe Biden, and same thing as Swalwell took a shot at Joe Biden, and it gave them notoriety, notice, at that moment. Both of them had, upticks, to start. They were able to boost things, and all of a sudden it's like, well, I'm not afraid of stuff, and I can say things that can stick, and I'll take the heat after I say it. But what they didn't do right after that moment is set the greater vision for America. See, it's the gentle turn that Barack Obama would make in saying, this is the way I see it, and this is the way they are, and this is where I see we're going over here. So are you paying attention to where we're going? Because we're going over here. Hey, would you like to over here? There happens to be some hope over here, So.
Yeah. So you can't just attack and highlight the negative aspects or the negative messages of your opponent and expect that to bring the voters to you. It will get you a news cycle for a day, maybe even a week.
Yeah.
But it's not going to motivate people to change who they're supporting and to donate to your campaign, which really at the end of the day is what's keeping people in the game in the Democratic, primary race. Is you have to have so many donors and have raised so much money in a given period of time in order to be in the hunt. And then eventually that's been up to this point, and now that we start having primary states, the votes and the amount of delegates they get from each primary is going to end up determining who the nominee is at the convention, right?
Right. Exactly.
So the people will start to have their say, and the people are having a say in who they're supporting and donating to, and how many donors they all gets them on the stage. But eventually it's going to be state by state and a bit of a different dynamic.
Yeah.
And I don't know.
Communication is the big piece of this thing, Tom. I mean, you might have noticed that I'm all dressed up today because I'm actually going out, teaching, 5 executives from a major company about how to create messaging that helps them with their both their internal staff as well as with the public, how do you create some messaging that's going to be in alignment with, where they want their company to go, and how is their leadership going to adjust so that they can cultivate truth and trust between each one of themselves, and notice that when truth and trust don't show up, and then say something about it, and say something about it, not in a combative way, but saying, listen, this is the way I'm seeing truth, and this is the way you're seeing truth. And the make the healthy discussion from that viewpoint. As a consultant, I'm getting hired out to do that, to help people to, move their message forward, and to not defeat the other side, but move into some form of collaboration, so that it's more, cooperative, and more additive, and that the best idea can leak up to the top, not whatever good idea you have, we're going to figure out how to legislate around it. It's like, that's what's happening. We're legislating around ideas, healthcare for all. How do we legislate around that, not to have that, so that we could keep the same systems in place? It's like, oh my gosh, it's like, that's not a healthy way to go about growth. It just isn't. Anyway,
Wow.
so we have a few more things to go. Tom, next time, let's go ahead and take out for a spin a little bit about how does mutual respect going to look like? How does integrity get restored? Because we got to do that as a nation. How does truth and trust get restored? Because I think those are two pieces, because the negative messages and the infighting will only get you only to one part of the Sisyphus hill, and the boulder rolls back down. Look at all the different people that are underneath the boulder. All the ones that are dropping out going like, oh, we ran out of money, we couldn't get up the hill. Well, you had your moment and you didn't build upon it, or you said something that distracted from that moment, that showed that you were not the leader, of the free world.
Wow. All right. Well, it sounds good, Bill.
Yep.
I look forward to that.
All right. Thanks, Tom.
Thank you for listening to this Purchasing Truth podcast. We trust that you have enjoyed this engaging and thought-provoking conversation. Our hope is that you've received value, found clarity, and broadened your truth perspective in this episode. If you did, leave us a review or visit our website, purchasingtruth.com. Join us again for another informative and content-rich discussion here at the Purchasing Truth podcast. Don't just accept whatever information comes your way. Join the discussion. Discover your own voice. Purchase your own truth.